Hi, everyone, and welcome back to the New Beyond. I'm your host, Judith Rich, and I'm honored and delighted to have as my guest today Dave DTO Kemp, a friend, a colleague, an incredibly creative, masterful, accomplished musician and music producer who designs inspirational music. Get this, to raise the vibration of the planet. And as I think about, as I listen to Dave's music, I think, I'm sorry, I call you Dave because I met you as Dave. I know you go by DTO now. Um, as I think about DTO's music, if there were a soundtrack to the realm called the New Beyond, like the New Beyond, if it were a physical place, and there was music playing in the background, it would be your music, DTO, because
Mm,
that's the vibration and the frequency that I imagine would be aligned with what the new beyond represents. So I'm just going to toss the ball to you because you have such an amazing and varied career that you've gone in so many different directions. I think our listeners would be most interested in hearing you share your journey, your story. How did Dave Kemp, the person I met in a leadership
mhm.
training about,
Yes.
I don't know, 4 or 5 years ago, become DTO? What's the story?
I love that. Thank you so much for having me, number one. And it's an honor because, yeah, our story is everything, right? We're all storytellers. I feel that's the beautiful part of us. I like to say choosing to be human organisms, right? And I say that as DTO because DTO, I'll kick it off, it means Dave the organism. And so I was born in a small town in Iowa, Muscatine, and on the banks of the Mississippi River. And you know it's a small town because I'm going to give you a fun fact, which is Mark Twain, Samuel Clemens, actually lived there. And so he wrote about the sunsets of Muscatine, Iowa, along the river. And, when I grew up, it was very much a household that had working father. He's a school teacher. My mother is classically trained on piano. And corn is very important in Iowa. So growing up as a kid, a lot of my friends, and including myself, we worked in the cornfields. And I love it because it's a rite of passage and it also kind of distinguishes who I am. I'm part of Generation X, I was born in 1974.
What does
And
working in the cornfields look like? I've got to just
so
insert the question
I
here.
love that, of course. So what that means is you wake up very early in the morning, by the way, 5 a.m. And if it weren't for music to inspire me, because one of my themes in life is music, of course, and you get to the cornfield and it's a bunch of high school kids and migrant workers and you detassel corn. And so what you do is you take out this tassel from the corn so it can actually pollinate and grow corn. And so you manually, back in that time era, you needed the detassel. And the machinery and all the technology of doing it came later on. And it started to get a little better, but you still needed a bunch of high school kids to go out and detassel corn. I would say most people that you meet in my generation or older have detasseled corn. Like it's just like, and I
At
had a
least one's from Iowa.
of the ones from Iowa and the Midwest, 100%. And it was just very humid, very hot. It allowed you to have a strong work ethic where you just went for it. And also you got money so you can go to the arcade and have fun. And of course, my parents taught me to save some of it. But yeah, I really enjoyed detasseling, only because, it just gave me that grit. And I think that that's a part of life, at
Yeah,
some
definitely.
stage for all of us to know how to keep moving forward, as we call it, having a breakthrough.
Absolutely. So I just have to say, just displaying my ignorance here. I didn't even know there was such a thing as detasseling corn. I mean, who knew? A city girl. I mean, I was born on a farm, spent the first 3 years of my life on a farm, but after age three, uh, so the past 80 years, I've been a city girl. So detasseling corn is a new thing for me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I
Yeah,
mean, you're basically removing this feathery tassel, and what it
yeah.
does is so basically you're removing the tassel from one type of corn plant, which is the female plant. So you prevent it from pollinating itself. So then the pollen from a different type of corn plant, the male plant, which has its tassel, blows over in and pollinates the detasseled female plant. So it's a whole like masculine,
So whole
feminine.
yes, it's a reproduction thing.
Exactly. Yeah. It's like you're basically controlling who the parents are for the next generation of corn. You know,
Okay.
yeah, build it and
All
they will
right. Well,
come, right? Feel the dreams.
I certainly didn't expect this interview to go in this direction, but here we are. So, how did we
Yes.
get from detasseling corn? What came after that, or what came before?
Yeah. Well, essentially, I like to frame it that I chose my mom. And my mom had a upright piano. And some things that we don't always realize is when we were in the womb, all of us, we developed a sense of hearing around 20 weeks or so. So I was listening to music, whether unconsciously or not. And so I just came into this household of music and around the holidays and family. And there's just all this la 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 la, all these scales. So it was like wired into my consciousness that music was this frequency, this vibration. And from there, when I was 5 years old, I got classically trained because you develop the motor skills, not only to
Mhm.
play the piano, but other tasks. Like later on in life, I had a paper route, which is something that kids were doing on a bicycle back then.
Yes,
It
yes,
was a lot of
yes.
fun, like big wheels and ramps, and it's great. And so what was wonderful is my parents were saints in so many ways because we would play loud music because eventually I got into playing the drums. And then my brother and I bought a keyboard, a synthesizer, and we would just make so much ruckus and play music really loud. But because my mom was a musician, she supported that. And, I always jokingly say there's three ways to learn something in life: practice, practice, practice. And they trusted that we were both practicing. Eventually, my brother was also playing the trumpet, the bugle, and he went into the military later in life and played that instrument and served our country. And then I
Wow.
got to travel to California later on and began to, have this whole experience of how music for yoga and meditation and all of this experience came to life. But yeah, for me, being in the Midwest, I love returning. I'm actually going to be on tour this summer. I'm going to go back and see my mom and see my family. There's just this like wholesome part about being there that I really enjoy. And just like you've been here to our wellness and retreat center in Embody in Costa Rica,
Yeah,
the
yeah,
pace of life is a little more relaxed, or the locals call it tranquilo. And so I love going to
yes.
Iowa because, the California experience I had for 2 decades was so amazing. But that's where the great aha moments came, and the community of heart space and opening, and, what is human consciousness? How can we grow and how can we flow into our purpose? And that's where, Yogananda in the early 1900s brought yoga to Encinitas, and I happened to choose to live in Encinitas. And a funny
But
side
didn't
story,
Yogananda also establish a community in
self-realization.
Iowa?
Yeah, there's meditation that takes
Yeah.
place. Yeah, in yes, there is. And so small
Yogananda
little.
University or something like that?
Yeah, and there's actually a good friend of mine who's also a music producer shared with me about how his family, actually went to Fairfield, Iowa, and learned about all these practices. And it is very random and very interesting, though, that. But it was a part of the Self-Realization Center, and there's one in Iowa City as well, where they teach, Kriya Yoga and regular meditation practices, and they go with the teachings of Yogananda. So
Hmm.
yeah, people sometimes, it's when I was growing up, all the cool stuff was happening on the East Coast and the West Coast, and we always felt like
Yeah,
the Midwest was always forgotten. Um,
yeah.
and so it was kind of great that I got to live in California for 2 decades. But through that process of having friends and community teach me about these practices. Now, I will say at first, it wasn't about the spiritual or the physical practice of yoga. I was just inspired by a dear friend of mine who happened to be the nutritional scientist that is Ayurvedic doctor that works for Deepak Chopra. I didn't know all that. But she was like teaching me, showing me that a routine matters. So she would wake up at 6 a.m. She practiced Ashtanga yoga with Tim Miller. I was like, wow, how powerful that people are driven and motivated. She moved from DC all the way to California to practice with Tim Miller, who's an incredible yoga instructor. So for me, I was like, wow, that's commitment. And at that point in my life, I was a full-time school teacher. And I was teaching Spanish because in the 90s, I traveled all over. I didn't want to shovel snow and be cold on campus at the University of Iowa. So I met all these amazing friends from Spanish speaking countries like, hey, I want to go there. And so, yeah, that's a part of where, for me, it just started to unfold of like this international experiences, the art form of music, just meeting more people that opened me up to my own, possibility of like the routines in my life that then became deeper spiritual practices, right? You come for the practice of, hey, I want to be with community. I want to do something for myself. And then all of a sudden, over time, the profound depth starts to take hold and you're like, wow, the roots are deep.
Yeah, well, it sounds like you were, like you said, you like to think you chose your mother. You were born into the deep roots. I mean, you brought the deep roots with you, I think. You
Thank you.
arrived already deeply rooted, DTO.
Thank you.
Yeah. So you went from the University of Iowa. Did you study music there or education or?
It's interesting because at first, when I went to the University of Iowa, I was a music major at the community college. I played in jazz bands, marching bands, and all this in high school, college. And then I was really, for a brief moment, I was like really into film, but it just captivated me, just the art form of storytelling, right? Just like your podcast is having guests on and we get
Mhm.
to share these stories about our lives.
Yeah.
And right away, I met an amazing group of people from Colombia, Venezuela, Argentina. And I had a Spanish teacher because I was like, oh, I'll keep on taking some Spanish. And it was just so profound because I was living in the dorms. They called it the International World Language House. And so I had all of these roommates. I had a roommate from Brazil. My neighbors were all different countries. And every time you had lunch, guess what? You sat at a table in the cafeteria and it would say, Espanol, or it'd say French, or it'd say Russian. And so you'd only speak that language at the table. So it was really a supportive community. And for me, it was like, just kept on feeling this global interaction with other people. And so many people were like, oh, I just studied in this country, that country. And through that, I was like, well, I'm ready to, travel somewhere. So what happened is in, the mid 90s, I got to go to Venezuela. I studied there. And as momentum happens in life, then I came and studied in Costa Rica. And then I chose to become a world language teacher. And that really was about the culture, the dance, the music. You've seen me do some salsa dancing. So that was the fun part of who I was able to choose to become is, and also, let's just face it, like I was like over 95% Caucasian culture, which is awesome. I love it. I'm proud of my roots. But all of a sudden I go to another part of the world where it's like 95% Latinos and I'm like the minority. So it was like a fun like little reverse of roles of like, oh, how do I adapt? How do I learn about this other way of living? And then what are the benefits that I could get from that? Like living with a family where there's 3 generations under one roof and people are working together,
Yeah.
making dinners together, having conversations together. I mean, my family, love them, but sometimes it was like TV dinner. We're just like watching HBO or Cinemax and watching a movie. We're never like, hey, what was your day like? And so that felt really good to be like, familia. That's a nice concept. So taught me a lot.
So that sounds like it was your new beyond or a new beyond for you. I mean, it was definitely beyond anything that you had known or lived or experienced in your life in Iowa.
It was,
Wonderful.
and
Totally
just
outside the box.
and anyone that's been to Latin America that's watching and listening, there's this other like texture and flavor and celebration that kind of comes
Yeah.
in. It's just less like, oh, I got to work in the fields, I got to detassel corn, and I got to wake up and do a third shift job and work for the man. It's cold out. where you're in these like exciting, exotic, tropical countries with the fruits that are just so like delicious and nutritious. And all of a sudden, it's just like I embodied that. And actually, I had to have a school counselor from the University of Iowa, and she was flying down to speak with other students, just doing some check-ins, like, "Hey, how's the learning coming along?" She was blown away by how much I was almost a chameleon, just like really learning the language. And you witness it here, Judith, right? Where,
Yeah.
I always jokingly say that I'm, on the outside I'm gringo, but on the inside I'm Latino. And people are like, yeah,
Yes.
something's going on, where there's a past life or something where you just totally embrace that. But, let's face it, the internet and technology and phones and screens and TikTok and all that wasn't around. Like I was learning old school. I actually had conversations with human beings. I go out salsa dancing on the weekends. And that was great. I just felt like this energy of the community. And again, when I'm from a very small town, you had to kind of search for entertainment, where when you're in Latin
Yes.
America, you go and you have these family celebrations. And so that was definitely my new beyond.
Mm, so cool. So you spent time in Latin America,
Mm-hmm.
and what brought you to Costa Rica?
Well, Costa Rica for me was a really beautiful moment because I was dating a farm girl when I was in Iowa across the river in Illinois. And there was this energy. That's the best way to describe this moment in my life. It was one of those aha moments. And I was dating twins, one of them, the twin came and it's like, "Oh my gosh, I just got back from Costa Rica." And she had this Costa Rican shirt and she's talking all about it. And she's like, the people. And she was so lit up. And prior to me knowing her, there was nothing that ever, from 0 to 10, she was usually like a 3 or 4 in her excitement level. But she was just like bursting with excitement and joy. And actually, her name is Joy. And she became a high school Spanish teacher, which is interesting because I became a high school Spanish teacher. And it
Oh,
just like motivated her so much. And so I was just like, Costa Rica. And this was back in, geez, like 1993 or so, over 32 years ago now. And I just remembered it was almost like a anchor moment in my life. Okay, whatever she's having, give me a double
I'm
because I'm ready for some adventure in my life. And so Costa Rica got on my radar. And then I came and studied at the National University of Costa Rica, lived with the family for half the time. And then I had a goal because I lived with the family the entire time when I was in Venezuela studying. And I had this dream. I was like, you know what? I want to become interdependent, living in a authentic small town community where I have my own apartment, paying my own way, still poor college student, just getting student meals and all that. But it just felt really great to be able to feel the rhythm of the town and just be able to be more understanding of what it's like to live there. And then, the parts of Costa Rica, as you witnessed, was mind boggling. It's like the rainforest, the waterfalls, the rivers, the zip lining, the whitewater rafting, the beaches, and just all
oh,
of the
just
beauty of nature, the sloths, right?
yes.
The baby
Oh,
sloths.
such a magical place. We're going to get to, we're making our way to embody Costa Rica, which is
Yes.
where my story, my experience intersects with yours in Costa Rica. Just to say, it's so alive in me. I was there just a couple of months ago with a group of women co-facilitating a retreat at your retreat center, and it was just one of the most magical experiences of my life. Really was.
Mm,
Yeah.
pura vida. Mm.
Yes. Yes. Okay, so you're in Costa Rica. Uh, you come back. Where did you teach Spanish? You came back to the States and
I
taught
did.
Spanish?
Yeah. So I completed, as I said, the school counselor from the University of Iowa came down. She was really impressed how I was integrating. And I actually wanted to stay and do another semester. And she's looking at her records. It's like, no, you've maxed out on how many countries you can travel and still get, school credit. She's like, it's time to come home. It's time to get your degree. And at that point, I chose to be a world language teacher. And so what that meant is I had to do an additional 2 years. And so, you have your master teacher and you are able to see what it's like to be a classroom teacher. So that was really powerful. So in 1999, it was interesting because I completed my degree and I did a really beautiful program that supports military men and women that have kids. And there's a day camp that they offer called Camp Adventure. And it happens to be that University of Iowa with University of Northern Iowa, as well as San Diego State University, has this program where they train college students to go on a variety of military bases globally and teach kids summer camp. So let's say if one of their parents is on a Navy ship for 6 months, that kid could get depressed or sad. So there's these day camps, then this curriculum, and that it was so much fun. And so I got to go to Hawaii and
Wow.
live at Pearl Harbor on base. And I met all these people from San Diego. So that's how my California, opening of like, wow, okay. People like, wait, you're going to become a Spanish teacher? Why be in Iowa? Like, you're going to be like competing, like with the student. And it was true. Like, I remember when I did my student teaching in Iowa, it was almost like I had to enroll them in the fact that a world language was important. Nowadays, I think everyone understands being multilingual is important.
Yes.
So yeah, then
Yes.
I chose to move to California. I got a job at one of the best school districts in San Diego. It's called the Poway Unified School District. And I got properly trained. I had really strong technology background. I ended up getting my master's in educational technology. And so I integrated a lot of group work and a lot of fun activities because to me as a school teacher, if I wasn't having fun, I know the kids weren't having fun. So I did a
Hmm.
lot of like photos and I started out with chalkboards, I'm like that hybrid school teacher where eventually
Part old school and
old school, yep, had the chalk. And then
yeah.
eventually I was one of the first teachers actually in California that had a smart board technology. Then we got projectors. But every time we got to this specific chapter in the Spanish textbook, it was chapter 7, Costa Rica. And so guess what I did? I made it really dynamic. I shared slideshows and photos of me in Costa Rica. So all the students are like, take us, we want to go to Costa Rica. And it's an upper middle class, very wealthy community, like the Qualcomm president and former, Padres and Chargers and, athletes live in that area. And so it was no big deal to ask a family to be like, hey, for a few $1,000s, would you like your kids to come down and do this educational cultural tour? So I got to come back and forth to the country a lot,
Oh,
and just
cool.
enjoy it from the part of like sharing. That's, I'm the kind of guy, like if I really enjoy something, I'm going to share it with someone else. Like if I eat at an awesome restaurant or I hear an amazing song or go to a phenomenal country, just like my friend Joy back in the day, you're going to share about it. So from there, I just kept on returning and returning. So prior to Himalaya and I coming to Costa Rica in 2020, I'd been to the country like well over 10 times. So it was
Hmm.
just, but back then I had let's say the old paradigm of someday after I teach 30 years, then when I'm retired, then I'll actually live and
Uh-huh.
possibly maybe half of my year I'll go to Costa Rica or Latin America. I didn't know it was specifically Costa Rica. I was like, maybe 6 months, and then the other 6 months I'll be in the States. And then of course everything shifted. So,
As
but
as it does, as
of
things
course, yeah.
do.
But at least I had the intention back then. I knew there was these like microcosmic, beautiful, like energy waves of goodness and positivity and adventure and rainforest. I just like, okay, that's always there and it's available. And sometimes it makes me sad that only less than half of the population in the US even have a passport. So these stories I'm telling today may not ever be experienced by people. But I will say I have become almost like the unofficial ambassador of travel, for a lot of my friends, and they've come down. I've inspired a lot of friends to be like, "Oh, I'm getting a passport." I'm like, "Grab it, let's go."
Yeah, yeah. Well, when did you become DTO? And when did you
Yeah.
become like the producer and this chapter of your life? When did that begin?
So as I said, I moved to California in 1999. So 10 years later, in 2009, is when I met an incredible singer. Her name's Krista Richards, and we started dating. And she shared with me this whole, let's just call it a part of like the counterculture, like Haight Ashbury, think about San Francisco, think about, this part of your life, your generation, Dr. Judith. And there's just like, we don't need to follow the norm. We don't just all need to get suit and ties and, be part of a machine, so to speak. And so I
Hmm.
went to this Burning Man experience. And of course, Burning Man
Oh,
is all about
okay.
self expression. Whatever you believe was reality, you can change that.
Okay.
And it's a
Burning Man was the thing, huh? That
Burning
was the
Man.
pivot point.
It was the pivot point because it opened up, because we're so used to transactional experiences, right? You're going to do this for me, so I'll do this for you. And then, it's not transformational. And
Right,
so
right.
for me to be
Transactional, yeah,
in a setting where it's like, wow, it's a gifting society, like whatever I generously
yeah,
choose to share and what my gifts are, that's going to be seen and honored and received in a way where people are going to support you. Not like, why are you doing yoga music? Because for me, when I started to create music for yoga, some friends and I were like, okay, I know what music is. I've heard of yoga, but what are you doing? Like, that's weird.
yeah,
And you get the weird
yeah.
label, that's strange. But every misfit, as we all know, starts out with these wild and wacky ideas. And over time, people start to see, oh, that's actually meditating is a really positive thing for your mental health. Listening to music that can really like swirl your soul, and you can get into a sacred practice like yoga and you have the soundtrack that supports, that's really beautiful. But what really transpired at Burning Man was just me being in this whole other world, and it just opened me up. And I realized it's like the movie Avatar, when you look at your hand sometimes and you're like, whoa, I'm alive. And I had this like epiphany, this aha moment. And I was like, I'm this organism, right? And then I'm a part of this larger organism. And of course, in the cosmos and the solar system and the galaxies and the trees in your yard and the plants behind you, these are all living organisms. And so this word just struck me as like an important message for me to get. And from there, I was sharing with my friends. And of course, my friends were like, okay, at some point they cut me off. Like, we get it. You're an organism. So we're going to call you Dave the organism, hence DTO, because it was like this aha moment.
Oh, that's such a great story. I would have never, ever in a million years guessed that that's what DTO stood for.
Yes. Yes.
I love it. But now, as I think about you and Burning Man, well, first of all, I have to say, I've never been to Burning Man, but I live in Northern California, and Burning
Mm-hmm.
Man is a part of the culture here. So I'm
Yes.
well acquainted with what happens at Burning Man. I know lots of people who are burners. And it's just I think the idea for Burning Man actually started in the Bay Area.
It did. Yeah.
um, yeah, so when I think about Burning Man and the art and the creativity and just the building of these, yeah, structures and the whole vibe of Burning Man, and think about you and the vibe of your music and who you are, it must have been like like a divine meeting or something, the experience of being there and
Mm-hmm.
all that was going on at Burning Man. It must have been like heaven for you.
Mm-hmm. Well, it just inspired me. Like when you're with inspirational people and, you know, structures that people have built. And remember, a lot of these
Yeah,
structures, what do they do at the end? They actually burn them down.
they
So then
burn them.
that's that
Yeah,
whole principle that I was learning in my yoga practice of non-attachment, where we're
yeah,
so attached to this material world, this organism that we're living in, this, house that we might be living in. And then what happens, in life? We don't always know what's going to happen. That's like the whole part of it.
uh,
And so you can't be attached to everything in a way that's going to knock you out of the game.
yeah,
And so that was for me a really powerful piece of like, wow, these people spent how many months building this gorgeous piece of art out of wood,
yes,
the temple. And then they have what they
yeah,
call on the Sunday night, they call it the temple burn. And it's very solemn, it's very sacred. And that's, what's sacred is what we choose to be sacred, right? And so
hmm,
when we feel that and connect that with our hearts, then that has meaning. And so for me, that was part of the inspiration of, wow, people are doing amazing, phenomenal art pieces. Where's the art within me? And at the time of my life, I was like, did I forget that? Because at that time, one chapter of my life I would like to insert here is I was a chief operating officer at a tech company from 2007 to 2013, which
oh
got me
wow,
into
that's
the
a
corporate world.
zag.
It
That's
was
a
a big zag,
zag.
a huge zag. And for me, I was like, okay, yes, I was making 3 times more than I was as a school teacher, but of course I had my personal phone, my company phone in both hands. and I was traveling. I was going everywhere in the world. I learned a ton about marketing, which was great because it's helped and supported my life as a musician at a retreat center. And it just recognized like, well, who am I and what's my message? To me, that's marketing. Marketing is just your message, really. Like just like in the old days, if you went, to Rome and there was an open market, you're bringing your gifts to the marketplace and you're just sharing it. Just like in Costa Rica, like you have your coffee that you grew in your fields and you're taking it to the market. So you're marketing, and you're sharing, and you're just inviting people in. So for me, when I had this wow factor of we can be globally connected, because I started working at this marketing company when the iPhone came out. And actually, a funny story is that CEO of the company, he took me under his wing, and basically we're the first ones in line at the Apple store when the first iPhone came out in San Diego. He got two of them. He handed me one. He goes, "Hey kid, learn this thing." I was like, "No problem." Because, I'd already had my master's in educational technology. I was like the innovator, and I was a part of that whole movement in education with like grades online, homework online. Because prior to that, a parent had to wait, a whole semester to even know how their kids were performing sometimes.
Yes.
So there
Yes.
was just so much to me but it's about the education part of it that I really was inspired by. But then when I went to Burning Man, I was like, is this my path to do this for always? And I realized, and I'm sure a lot of people reflect on their life like this, is like, oh, this was a chapter I chose to get the lessons I needed to then move forward into the next step.
So cool. So cool. Um, so inspirational music that raises the vibration of the planet. I've been listening to your music on my morning walks.
Mm.
Um, and it absolutely, your music absolutely transports me, transports the listener. Some of it, I feel like I want to dance. It's like a static
Mm-hmm.
dance. I want
Definitely.
to, I'm walking on a pedestrian path, in the East Bay underneath the BART tracks. I'm surrounded by, mothers with strollers and people hurrying to the BART train and all of that. So I'm not going to break into an ecstatic dance,
You
but
do a
I'd
little
like
bit,
to.
little
Yeah, it's
groove.
like, I'd really like to. But uh, there are some of your tracks. I think I had the experience this morning. I want people to play this for me when I'm dying.
Mm.
It's
Oh.
like the most beautiful, peaceful, soulful music that just like your music regulates the nervous system. It just really, it's both elevating some of it and calming others. It's expansive, and it's calming. It's really quite amazing music. You've got a new release. Tell
Mm-hmm.
us about your new release.
Thank you. Yeah, and that means the world to me, that creation that came from silence, that came into my consciousness, that the gratitude I have for my mother to share with me the notes of a piano, that I got to weave all these frequencies and sounds and vibrations and then have them come into your eardrums. And then you have such a powerful response of like, wow.
Yes.
So thank you
Yeah.
for receiving. That does mean so much to me.
Oh my
And
goodness. Thank you for the
yes.
giving. Thank you
Mm-hmm.
for the giving.
Absolutely. It's my ultimate
Yeah.
pleasure. It's that feedback loop, right? There's the sender, the message, the receiver,
Yeah.
then the feedback, and feedback is gold. So thank you.
Well, so tell us about your new release, and then I want you to
Mhm.
share with listeners about Embody Costa Rica.
Absolutely. So what I'm doing now is I have a series of songs that I'm launching every 2 weeks. And the next one that is coming up is called Alignment. And it's with a really powerful singer. Her name is Harmony Ohm. She's actually doing a festival called the New Earth Festival. And then I did one recently that's coming out, that's called Universe Incarnate. And it is taking that beyond energy and recognizing, ooh, we're incarnated. Here we are. And a fun side story is the singer, her dad used to be on Soul Train. So I'm starting to just like level up and work with more and more talented people. And I call it like the waterfall, the drip method. where the more that I am putting out my artistic expression on a more consistent, regular basis, just like the podcast, just like people do with a lot of their creations more and more. You can't just tell someone, wait until 20 whatever in the future. You have to be like, hey, this is consistent. And so that's what I'm doing. I'm doing a series of songs that are collaborations with really powerful singers and artists. And a lot of it has sounds that come from India or Latin America. And so it's like these ancient sounds for modern day insanity.
Oh, oh, that is so good. Say that again. That is so good.
Yes, like ancient sounds for modern day insanity that like remind us of this, the depth of who we are, and as you said, to pacify and chill us out and remind us to breathe, right? And that's the song that has the most listeners is that song Breath, and it was played on a harmonium. That you saw me play that ancient instrument from India.
I saw you play that. You played it for us when we were at Embody Costa Rica, and I used your song Breath on my most recent podcast episode that was about permission to stop, about reclaiming rest in a world that glorifies exhaustion, I think is the title of it. And I began with a few bars of that song, Breath. And I played that a few bars and invited listeners to just take a breath with me. And that song is that song feels like the soundtrack of my life right now. It's just so beautiful and so calming. And the rhythm is like breathing. Yeah, I'm sure that's intentional, right?
It was, yeah. Synced up, like the beats per minute is at 60 beats per minute. It's close to like resting heart rate. It's just like in that space and like relax. Let's be in our bodies. Let's remind ourselves of the gift of life. And it's so important that we pause. And you said it, like we're running and lists to do. And if you're following the news too often, you got all the chaos and crunchy energy of that happening, and you forget like who you are. I forget who I am in many times.
And
that
it really
song
seems
returned
like
me back to my breath. By the way, it's my own medicine.
Oh yes, that's the word. That's the word I was searching for. Your music is medicine. It is really medicine music, and it is music I would want to hear on a medicine journey. And I'm sure a lot of people use your music for medicine work and medicine journeys. There are some lyrics in some songs that are English, and one line in particular really struck me this morning as I was walking. And I'm sure you'll know which song it is. I can't remember what it's from. Maybe it's I'm Here. But the line is something like,
Here I am.
Here I am. You can take perfect from perfect, and perfect is left, or something like that. There's a line in one of those songs. You can take perfect from what is perfect, and perfect is left. And I may not be.
And only the perfect remains is the line.
And only the perfect remains. Yes. And that line took me into an inquiry on my walk. I began inquiring about that. The idea of perfect. Normally, I would say in this realm, in this physical realm, perfect doesn't exist, because there's always more. When we get to what we think is perfect, we see the next iteration. And so there's always more. So I began thinking about the idea of perfect being the way it is absolutely whole and complete, and nothing more is needed. Nothing more needs to be added to it. So it opened up a whole possibility for me of how perfect could simply mean enough. There doesn't need to be anything else. anything more. And the idea that you can take perfect from perfect and perfect remains. It just, that was such a profound thought, that what is enough is never diminished. You can take from it, and it's still perfect. It's still perfection, which is to say, it sort of leads me down a path of acceptance. Like, I accept this just as it is. It's whole and complete. And even if you take away from it, it's still complete. It's still whole. That was just a profound experience I had this morning, listening to your music as I was walking. So
Mm,
I wanted to just share that with you.
thank you. Yeah, the song's called Om Purna, and it's one of the most ancient Sanskrit phrases. So as I talked about the ancient mantras, and so the vocalist, her name's Michelle Infinity, she chose to sing the mantra in Sanskrit, and then she translated it into English. And you're right, the word Purna means fullness, completeness, wholeness, perfection, and
Mhm,
totality. And it means
mhm,
infinite, right? It's like beyond.
mhm. Yeah, yeah. Just so beautiful. Well, I want to shift gears a little bit with you and take us to embody Costa Rica. So I want to just begin by saying that a couple of months ago, a colleague of mine, a woman named Brandy Safran, and I led a group of 10 women to embody Costa Rica for a 6-day retreat. And I felt called there, as I had just, through the miracle of video and, online Facebook, watched Embody Costa Rica rise up from the ground, rise up from nothing, and become this amazing, magical, beautiful space.
Mm.
And we took a group of women there, and we were all absolutely, it was enchanting. So tell us about Embody Costa Rica and your vision, and what you've
Mm.
created there.
Oh, thank you for choosing to come. And it was such a delight. And I want to share with you that Himalaya and I, we felt like such a pinnacle moment take place when you got to come here with Brandy and your incredible, extraordinary group of souls that got to receive like what we're creating here, which is this immersive wellness, pura vida, pure life, as they call it in Costa Rica, natural, like embrace of what the land has to offer, with the beauty, the birds, and
Mhm.
all that we went to the adventure, the waterfall we went to. Oh my
Oh,
gosh,
yes.
you
I
rappelling
miss
down.
it. I know. I never would have made it down if you had not supported me.
Well,
But
yes.
yeah.
And that's we're
Totally.
an intimate, supportive community. And that's what we do at our wellness and retreat center. Like people get to work, as you witness, with us directly. And that
Hmm.
was the powerful part for us is, for Himalaya and I, we had been traveling and going to all these transformational festivals and speaking and teaching. I was playing my music. And when the proverbial everything hit the fan in 2020, we both, being very internationally experienced, were like, okay, it's time to turn the channel. Or I like the analogy, we're at the amusement park of life and let's get on a different ride. We've already spent plenty of time on the one called the Divided States. Um, so we were like, let's actually venture somewhere else. And so I can say this with your audience. We actually had an astrocartography reading, and Costa Rica has this beautiful energy center line for us, and specifically in the town we live in called Atenas. And we came, and as you've seen everything unfold, we became caretakers of this acre of land. We had our private home on it. And then we had this vision that started with a labyrinth. Himalaya was in deep meditation. She's usually at her altar space when all of these miracles take place. She's like, I see this labyrinth. And so we do what all adults do. We did deep, deep research into what labyrinths are on YouTube. And we found out, all these different civilizations, the history of time and labyrinths. So we found this beautiful Celtic design. And then when we became, the owners of the land, we put the labyrinth on, we started envisioning a yoga shala. And so the yoga deck, because we've been traveling everywhere, and you know this about the transformational work you teach, Dr. Judith, is you can't take the toothpaste and put it back in the tube, So like when you're out there and you've seen and you've witnessed and you felt the energy of 100+ people moving to the work you do in the world, we made this 2,000 square foot yoga shala from teak wood, all sustainable. We did it consciously. It's open air and it has this
it's so
incredible
gorgeous.
view. Yes.
Oh, it's so gorgeous. It began open on the top and the
Open
sides,
air.
right?
Yep.
And then you put a roof over
We
it.
did. Little by little, we learned that there's this tropical
Little,
rain that's going to come,
yeah.
and it became a pool temporarily. We're like, okay, but we did it really elegantly where it's utilizing natural components. And we put
Yes.
glass, the windows, a sliding glass, so you see the view. You're in nature. You're in Mama Gaia. You're in, La Madre Tierra, Pachamama, all the terms that we use for the Great Spirit. So it was so fantastic for us to be on our own wellness journey and then realize, let's create a hub, let's create a space that can allow for people to find and discover and seek and be invited into what holistic transformation looks like for the mind, body, and spirit. And that's what we do with Embody. And it's really important to know that the work that we've done with you and your colleagues of transformational education is that like baseline for us to work forward into something else. Because without that curriculum and without that ability for us to feel supported, then I don't think we would have gone for it with, all the physical, mental, emotional, spiritual angst and challenges along the way. And guess what we put into it? Embody is actually an acronym, which I think you'll love this, is the E in Embody stands for empowerment. The M is movement. The B, breakdowns and breakthroughs. The O is opportunities. The D is dharma. And then the Y is yoga. So it's 6 pillars that are a part of our curriculum.
Oh, I did not know that. It's perfect. It's absolutely perfect.
Everything is perfect.
It really, I do, when I think about what you've created there, I know that you have grand visions and grand plans to continue to develop. I mean, when you say an acre of land, listeners, I've got to tell you, this place, this space feels huge. What you have created on an acre of land, and it's kind of terraced, so it's not flat. So you've really made the most use of every inch of space there. And I know that you have plans for more development and in enhancing, the things that are already there. But I have to tell you, from the perspective of someone who has come there as a client of Embody Costa Rica, what you have created is perfection, absolutely perfection. To the staff that you have assembled, to the way, to the attitude of everyone, of you and your staff. I mean, it is such loving, generous, giving, being in service that, we felt so taken care of. We felt so received and taken care of. I just wrote a review on Google for you. I just cannot say enough. There aren't enough superlatives to describe how I feel about what you've created there. So I really am so, so grateful for what you have created. And I'm sure we'll be back. I'm sure we will be back.
This is
I already,
home away from home.
Yeah, I already feel called. You know what I miss? I mean, I miss everything, but I miss the birds.
Yes.
I miss the sound.
So many gorgeous birds.
The amazing birds. We would sit in circle in the mornings in the yoga shala and be serenaded by all these different birds. That was just like the soundtrack. The birds are like the soundtrack to Embody. They're really just amazing. So let me wrap this up by asking you, what do you envision? Where do you envision you and Himalaya being in your journeys? Let's say 5, 10 years out. What does the future look like?
Yes. Thank you for receiving all the magic here at Embody and the mindful connection to nature and really that's what we're feeling and tapping into is how can this be a possibility for more people to come? And now that we have our saltwater swimming pool, jacuzzi, the next logical step is for us to have additional accommodations. And grateful to say that we have extraordinary accommodations nearby that
You do, you
in
do.
our rickshaw, our embody shuttle, the tuk-tuk.
Yes, the tuk-tuk. Oh my gosh.
Yeah. At
You
the end of the
guys,
day, I'm a rickshaw driver. That's what I do.
that's what he does. Dave DTO drives this red motorized rickshaw, also known as a tuk-tuk, with
Yes.
and with flags. And when he drives into town at Tanis,
Yeah.
there he is. I mean, it's the only one, isn't it?
It's the
Is
only
there
one.
another one?
People know me. Yep, for that. I'm a tour
It's
guide. People see it and
it's
they're like,
just
ah,
amazing.
embody.
It's so
Mhm.
fun. It's just so
Yeah.
fun.
Yeah. And that's really what we want to do is get people to see the culture of an authentic, small, charming little mountain town in Costa Rica, in the Central Valley, in Central America. And there's just this care and this holding that the land has. And as you acknowledge the community of people that we attract, that is so supportive, that is so grateful to be here. And we're calling forward anyone on the global community that would want to see more about who we are at Embody Costa Rica and support in however that looks. And for us to be able to achieve our goals of having accommodations and having the ability to house at least 20 people on site would be a dream because that would really hold the container and the space. And as we move forward, and we trust over time, you said 5 to 10 years, that all of this is going to continue to unfold. And we're open to like a supercharge of some ability for us, some monetary donation or gift or someone that may want to support and just have a conversation. Everything's a conversation in life like we're having. And we've had already just the ability for us to be here, just so powerful, the ways that we've found support along the way. So that's the bigger vision. And then naturally having, in addition to the consistent local Costa Ricans that are coming in and people who are coming from abroad, we just recently talked about how we'd love to have more corporate events and experiences for team building and masterminds, as well as people that want to do 200-hour teacher trainings. And it's a venue. It's in a space for anyone to create. And we've always trusted that when people are on the land here, it doesn't have to be in a box. I mean, of course, your extraordinary title of your event was called Jungle Wisdom, which totally matched what you shared. But people can come and create and design whatever they choose. And for us to continue to have that intimate setting that's personalized for everyone, and for people to just kind of change the channel of their life and go somewhere else. And, as my dad would say, get out of Dodge,
Well, this is really getting out of Dodge. This is, it's like experientially, it's really out of Dodge. But the truth is, Costa Rica is not that far. I mean, if you live in the States or Canada or even South America, I mean, it's kind of central. It's right there in Central America. So it's not, I mean, it was like a 5-hour flight from San Francisco for me.
And
So
you
that's not
remember,
bad.
it's only 25 kilometers from the international airport of San Jose, Costa Rica, to our retreat center, which is massively unique. And that's a game changer for everyone, because many people have retreat centers. You have to go on a car for another 4 or 5 hours, way out in the jungle, way away from the people and the locals. Where for us, we love to be 25 minutes from the airport. We love to be with our neighbors that are Costa Rican, and we love to like share what it's like to live here. And naturally, a lot of people, and this is another dream we have, is more people that do want to potentially become an expat or live here, that we can support in that journey as well. I'm
and there are a lot of expats who live there, aren't there?
There are, there's a nice percentage of people that are expats. And the cool part, the expats here though, like myself, people integrate with the culture. And that's a massive difference of the reality of how people take care of each other, look after each other, and respect each other. And that's what I really love, because even Himalaya was teaching a yoga class this morning, and there was at least 4 or 5 locals. And so she was, breathe in your nose, inhalar la nariz, exhalar la boca. So Himalaya, as you know, she's getting so much better at Spanish. So we do like bilingual classes. So we do want to make sure that anyone that's local, that wants to learn the language. So that's what we love about this journey that we're on, is to embody our truth, embody the authenticity of just going for it. And that's, I'm grateful to say. And here I am in my recording studio, and up above me is our beautiful yoga shala. So we just, it's all this
I wondered where your studio
energy.
was. Okay.
Yeah, it's underground.
Okay.
So
cool. So the acoustics are perfect. Yeah.
It is. Yeah. And that's another dream I have, is and it's already happening, Judith, which is incredible, is locals and international musicians, producers, people that want to record guided meditations, really high caliber singers are starting to fly in and work with me, because it's so convenient to fly in. And so that's another piece for me, is I'd love to continually support people that want to come to a recording studio here, because it's like a mind twist. Like, wait, there's a professional recording studio in a wellness and retreat center. But once they know who Himalaya is and myself as the visionaries, they're like, okay, that makes sense. Yeah. And when people hear the birds, like what you were saying, like, I hear all these birds, I hear music. I want to sing something like a songbird. It happens to people that get so inspired, like you
absolutely. It's absolutely a musical environment, nature. There's so much that I could say, and I know for you to share. So I'm going to leave some links in the show notes for how people can connect with you at Embody, how people can find your music, how they can follow you on Spotify and iTunes and all the various platforms for your music. Yeah. And as well as your website at dtomusic.com. And I just finally, I want to say that people can subscribe and be licensed to use your music. Yes?
Absolutely. Yeah. So what I've done is something that is really powerful for people that are doing podcasts, or that are wanting to record guided meditations or audiobooks or YouTube content, or you go to someone's website and there's this beautiful soundtrack music. So, you want to follow international copyright laws. So I have this really amazing offer. When you go to dtomusic.com, you can sign up and be a subscriber. So then you get international licensing. And even if you're not into content creation and you're just wanting to support an artist like myself, you're going to get exclusive songs. You're going to get advanced listening opportunities, and as well as you'll be on my newsletter. So there's a lot of ways it's like supporting that music that, as you mentioned, is here to raise the vibrations of the planet.
Oh, that's so wonderful. I just really want to thank you and wish you and Himalaya all the best in all of your endeavors. And thank you so much for spending time with us here in the New Beyond today. And thank you, listeners, for being with us on this journey with Dave DTO, Dave the Organizer. So until next time, many blessings.